Um, you stayed at the company, right? You stayed there and you worked, to each position, entry level, the next level, the next level, the next level, and to the point where you became that. Now, guess what? You know all about that type of business, ins and outs because you worked at that level, 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 to all the way to CEO or whatever, man. It might be that, or it might be, you did start a business, it failed, and then you learn to like, um, not put money into this as a business and this. You make sure you know all that financial literacy and everything, man. This person does, and that's a great thing with this. You know, all your energy is going towards that, and then people see, or maybe they don't see, but the people who do see, you know, do know that and they see the value in having you around, and this. They know that I know about financial literacy. I know about um, how my job works, and I dare I say I'm probably better than them at doing that type of job. I'm a great manager. If they need their money managed, they can come to me. You know, but you could get burnout for that. You know, like what I mean by this is sometimes you don't want to just be working, and you want to have some fun. But sometimes you put so much time into that shit, that you're like, this is my fun. Me going to work every day is my fun. And if that's truly what it is, then that's truly what it is. But if it ain't, and you're lying, don't be an asshole when, said other people are, running around having fun. And they might not even be as like calculated or move the way you do. Don't be a fucking, asshole when, that shit happens. You know, you're kind of doing a different thing. You're more, you know, you're smarter than other people in that way. And you're more, of a go getter and career oriented. These other people are like people focused. I want to make sure I have more confidence in this person. I want to make sure I'm, you know, having fun and in growing for myself. You know, growth isn't always in the financial areas, but for you that's what it is. And for you it's like there's always something for you to learn in that. And I do know, you know, there's always something to learn in like a certain thing. So like what I'm saying is, you run a business that is, I don't know, well off, and you want to know how to like go from this money to this money. And you have a lot of money. Like, let's say you're like, almost a millionaire or a millionaire, and you're like, how do I do that? You don't mind learning from other people, and then becoming better than them. You know, I'm just saying the downside is like you can burn yourself out by like, being too caught up on that fucking work. Now the next sign is Aquarius in Jupiter in the second house. So you like to run around and talk. You like to run around and, convince people about ideas you have that might not seem so, acceptable. Or maybe people weren't thinking like that, you know, and they are like, okay, maybe that is a possibility, that type of thing. Maybe you come up with a new way to, do something, man. Um, I'm trying to think, because people come up with all kind of nifty shit these days. Um, you come up with a way to, hmm, okay, this is already a thing, but a new phone charger, right? Because that's like a problem that people have, right? This phone charger though is like, it's one that is like, infinite energy almost. It's like it's ran off of like Wi-Fi or internet connection. So like if you're in an area that has internet connection, you can, still charge your phone. You know how like power banks, right? Power banks are these little things that, you charge your phone with. This thing runs off of that, you know, frequency of the like internet. So like say you're in a mall that has like different internet connections. You connect to that or you connect to like whatever, right? And you can continuously charge your phone from that, you know, because because you're smart enough and you know that, you can make that happen. This is not something I'm doing, but it's a way to charge your phone continuously, because like with the power bank, right? Eventually that power bank's going to die and then that power bank needs charge itself, right? With that, you can essentially, charge your phone continuously. It's like a little um, thing. You put it in the charging port, and then that picks up on the, whatever connection you're attached to. Boom, and it just starts flowing in. Charge. You have a continuous charge on your phone. But when you take it off, your phone's not charging. You keep it in there, and it stays charged all day. you know, and like you're a person who like created this idea and other things, you have it, and but like like the ins and outs of it, you know, shit that the little details and shit that other people don't know about, to get this to work, it's this way and that way, you know, you had to go through, different trial runs and those stuff. It's shit that will like be a game changer for people, but some people might not, think so. But that, you know, that's this one's kind of like one that people like my age and a little older and definitely younger, they would like some shit like that, a thing that can charge your phone anywhere continuously. It's always charged. Your phone will never be dead. You can make that shit for the Apple people and for the Android. And it's a person like that who makes their way that way. They just need to find the right people who are like really into like the tech and like evolving technology and shit towards like that kind of end, and then doing that. But maybe there's like another person who's like doing that shit. Because these days there's people who have like similar um like ideas and shit, and you might have pushback where you have to now sell yourself better. You have to be confident that your product is the one that's actually gonna fucking work. It ain't gonna be something that's like kind of like fucking weak. And people ain't gonna like want to invest in that or whatever. You're gonna have your friends. You're gonna have trial runs and other things. You basically make your ends. You make your leaps and growths from having people around who want to listen to your ideas, and then also not just that. You're gonna then take criticism or um, whatever from other people when things fail. You still have the basic idea down, but you're gonna take it and improve upon it. You ain't gonna give up. You're just gonna go back to the drawing board and do that. But with that, that takes more brain power and other things. But you don't mind. You have the brain power. Or maybe you do not mind it. You don't like it because you're actually a person that don't like thinking so much. You like to, you know, spend time with family and friends and other things. But now that your idea for this, charge is now, down bad, you know, you have to go back to the drawing board, fix some things, you know, before selling yourself again. That can, lead to, kind of a crash out as well, you know. Oh, you people probably don't understand because you're not smart and you don't understand all the thought I have to put into this and other things for it to go smoothly, and I know, and it's frustrating because that this can be. This is something that is like actually fucking possible. It ain't people need to charge their phone, and that's an issue and other things, and you can, and you have the ability to, but then you're frustrated because, you also are a human being and you also don't mind, dialing back and having fun, but then, you prioritize, this because to you, this is like how you grow as a person, getting that out there and other things, and then people know you, for that, you know, and that product is something that people need, and you're a kind of people person, you know, and maybe you ain't a people person, but when it comes to like that type of shit, you are. I need people to have that for themselves. Because I know if I was in that situation and I didn't have a phone charger, damn, I'll be I'll be some type of way. But you know, it still works out in the end. As long as you find the people who understand that you are intelligent and you like to you know think about things before doing things. And you want to make sure everything's up to par before selling yourself too. And you can sell yourself. Don't sell yourself short. Next person is Pisces in Jupiter in the second house. Pisces, Jupiter in the second house. This person, oh damn, this person has wisdom. They seize opportunities. They don't gotta be the center of attention. They know people are suffering. They know people are going through it because they have gone through it, or they just understand that's the thing. Um, Human beings, you know, we have downtimes. Now you want to be the one who comes in and saves somebody. You want to be the one who comes in and turns their life around. You have that ability. You get like excited from shit like that. You know, that kind of turns you on when you can be that. And then people are really fall in love with that shit too. When other people like didn't want to look at me because I'm not this kind of person, you still took note. Because you have an intuition as well. That's like damn fucking good. And like when somebody's actually like down bad, you know, and you like just feel it, and you're just like, damn, I don't, I don't want to feel this way because I'm feeling the energy coming off of said person. Now I am gonna take action, and I'm gonna make sure that person feels better, so I feel better. And you do that, you know, and you get friends from it, and people end up taking note of you more because of it, you know, because like you can see something that is a problem and want to fix it for people, but it's like deeper for you, you know. It's you know I want to like help their emotional state. I want to make them really feel better. You know, it's not just another, I don't know, person approaching you or with a job, you know, or with an idea or with a business plan. It's me, and I'm one who's trying to like and you ain't doing too much though. You just know the like root of the problem that's going on, and you're like, capitalizing on it in a way that's not too overwhelming to, the people you're trying to present to, and it's still enough to like get them hooked on what you're trying to like sell. And then by then, it's, as you may say, it's smooth selling from there. You know, mm, you know, and you can avoid, dangerous paths, but you take dangerous paths sometimes because you want to be like, again, you want to be that one that saves somebody. You want to be the one that like kind of like, changes that from a negative to a positive. And in that, that's a confidence too, because other people would know about that and be like, whoa, that's gonna affect my energy. You might know it's gonna affect your energy, but you kind of want to like live life in that kind of way. You have balls and shit. You'll take the risk, you know. And like if it does fuck you up, you know that at some point, and this is me telling you, you take time for yourself, get the fuck away from that shit, come back into, doing whatever you're trying to do, you know, to like make a, grand, well, maybe not grand, but, prosperous, abundant, wealthy life for yourself. You not have that wisdom from a bad experience to use going forward, and I will, avoid and manage that as it comes, because I remember how it felt for me. Not just that it was a bad experience, but I remember all the emotions and like fucking, trauma that I had from that. So I don't want to feel that again. So, that is, Jupiter in the second house, as told by Darius the Green Angel. I made two videos for this one. Um, so this is Capricorn and Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And the other video that cut off has, Aries to Sagittarius. So be cool, crawl in the corner.